If it's okay for everybody, I would like to put you in your rooms. Is it okay?
Mm-hmm.
Okay. Das musst du auf Stumm schalten, wenn es geht. Hast du das gerade reingeschickt? Ja, Christoph. Wieso? Weiß nicht. Achso, die Opening. Hast du die gehabt, die Opening und Closing Prayers? Mhm. Ja. Aber er hat sie jetzt nochmal auf Slack gestellt. Mhm. 5 oder? Nochmal auf. Mhm. Da ist besser. Da kann ich höher aufziehen. Das LD. Wer ist LD? Ach, ich habe die Dolmetscher wieder weg. Oh ja, alle. Nee, wo sind denn die wieder? Ach so. Die sind alle in ihren Räumen. Ah, ja, ja. Und das ist aber besser. Ja, ja. Wenn die in den Räumen sind, dann ist es okay. Wer ist der Co-Moderator? Weiß ich nicht. I will open now for everybody. Achso, wir sind ganz oben. Mhm.
Hello to everybody, welcome.
Das ist nur eine Zeit. Oder? Wir machen um 30. Ja, wir können ja schon da. Jetzt kann ich wieder nicht mehr aufnehmen. Oh, ich kann nirgends mehr aufnehmen.
Das Deutsche kannst du nicht.
Mhm.
Das kann aber nicht wahrscheinlich.
So, vielleicht, wenn ich den Chat vergessen habe. Schließen. Ja. Nee. Doch da. Lass offen, lass offen. Jetzt kann 30. Mhm.
I think we can start now. On behalf of the center, we would like to welcome you very warmly for today's and tomorrow's teaching. We're very much looking forward to your teachings. I would also like to welcome the translators again and all the audience around the world. Thank you.
In the Buddha, Dharma, and Supreme Assembly, I take refuge until awakening. Through the merit of practicing generosity and the other paramitas, may I attain Buddhahood for the benefit of beings. May sentient beings have happiness and the causes of happiness. May they be freed from suffering and the causes of suffering. May they not be separated from the happiness that is free from suffering. Namo, to the Guru, the complete purity of phenomenal existence. I offer phenomenal existence arising within the ground. I pray that the three realms be completely liberated. Grant blessings from its steps, that samsara be uprooted from its depths. Lord, wish-fulfilling crown jewel, your victorious mind is beyond word, thought, and description. You possess the 5 all-knowing wisdoms. You, the essence of love, endowed with kindness, are the precious protector of beings. I supplicate you from within the natural state of mind. Please bless me within the state of reality itself. Please bless me to realize this completely pure, primordially non-arising mind beyond thought as the Dharmakaya. The ground is sprinkled with scented water and strewn with flowers. It is adorned with Mount Meru, the 4 continents, the sun and the moon. Seeing it as a Buddha field, by offering this, may all beings experience the completely pure realm. Please turn the wheel of the Dharma, of the 2 vehicles and their combination, according to the dispositions and mental capacities of sentient beings.
Sanje Sona Rabdu Shijen Dewe Juru Jurwa Tedan Cheje Tambe Chunyin Baryan Drishi. Namkada Nyambe Simchen Tamcheje Tundu Tobja Lana Member Yang Tabra Zobe Sanjeji Kumbandamba Jinechan Tobracha. Tene Techedo Tambe Chu Samula Teba Samba Gomba. Authentic chicken, some tone, any good young taba chicken, December sure.
And so thinking of all sentient beings as vast as space with the intention to accomplish their purpose or their benefit, with the objective to reach the state of fully perfected great awakening or complete Buddhahood, then listening, engaging in study, contemplation, and meditation with this objective in mind, we should cultivate this pure intention of bodhicitta while we listen to the Dharma teachings.
Oh yeah. Atene nanzo tanda ne shuya ge chude tene karere saying the zane sanje jungden de songbeta tene do tingin zengi jago sayada de shore chibe kaptene chires.
And what it is that is being taught or explained is the Buddha's sutra, the King of Samadhi, or the Samadhiraja Sutra, taught by the Buddha.
네, 다치다 산재의 송 차상의 사바다 야채와 짠짠으로 된도 산재의 송은 나네 대야고 말했어야지 예와 때는 매발에 탐제돼 답배지 자 침보다 사보 어떻게지 임발에 근데 대나네 라버도 다땡인 생기 잡은 된다지나 아니 당가랑서 변하지 가주반다지나 아니 차자 침보서야 돼 다지 냠는 게 쪼고 되지 있는 게 여러와 대인들 전에 착챙기 꼴텔라 제단한테 상하게 감내 송백이 차자 침보서야 제단 도게 감내 송백 차자 침보서야 돼 이 용도 여러와 다 착챙기 지금 뭐 전난탕이 돌아 대인들 전에 도게 남내 송백 차자 침보서야 돼 근데 산재기 노팅인 전자분 되나한테 송이가 요래 송베래 대인들 전에 띵인 전기 자분데 드네야 슈와포데 다우이션을 주바스 리다와 산재가 로마 다우이션을 써야 돼. 나 다우이션은 데 드네 치에서 그 강쟁기 종라 드네 냠에 감부백이 제와시 나와요 말에 대인들 전에 드네 가랑수 믹스하게 드네 가지바라 답배지 돈데 드네 저와 첨보유 되고 어떤 드네 지기 차되기래스.
And so, as that is the case, of course, when it comes to the Buddha's speech, the Buddha's teachings, all of it in its entirety, all of the Buddha's teachings are extraordinarily vast and profound. So we can't really say that one thing is better than another, or this is better than that. And as it is all extremely vast and profound, but in particular, or especially this King of Samadhis Sutra, this Samadhiraja, is particularly meaningful to us as Kagyupa practitioners, mainly as our main practice is Mahamudra, or that there is this focus on the practice of Mahamudra. And there are the two categories of Mahamudra. There is Mahamudra in the context of secret mantra, and there is Mahamudra in the context of sutra. And so this King of Samadhi Sutra is the Mahamudra within the context of sutra. So it is the sutra explanation of the practice of Mahamudra. And as it was taught by the Buddha to the disciple, the Bodhisattva Chandraprabha, who put his request to the Buddha, And then Chandraprabha also emanated or was reborn as Gampopa in the land of snows in Tibet. And so in this way, this particular sutra is especially special and meaningful to practitioners of the Kagyu lineage.
다른데 인도자네 단도 땡인증이 제분데 난게 주저 쪼데 가레스나다 땡인증 야나드니다 차자침보 람차자침보 냠술랭술 칸데지 고위에메다 데 쪼시는 소는 외로와 근데 인도자네 가산 리위지바 땡인증이 리우세 되나라 근데 땡인증 세야데다 칸데지레스 조티나서 땡이다 조 땡인증의 링담으로 망보요래 참바 공백의 땡인증 닝지 공백의 땡인증 나서와 땡인증 삼지면 잡으러 와야와 이는야 단답값을 바베게 땡인증 세야데 간데지레 송도자네 생민 내로 또바데 다 땡인증레스 덴데게 생민 내로데 또네 또바 제발라 테지 초사 디바장고 유로와 초사 디비앙의 톤에 생민 내로 도바다 땡인진진의 송송 다 근데 인도자네 강들양 단데네마 리웅아베 나라 따조 가르송도스나 테네 맞아 땡인진 양타바지 다 단다 땡인진의 자보함 차자 침부기 테네지 도바 양타바지 줄을 제고 위에나 테네 웬바때야데 그 개침부리스 땡인도자네 만수 집에 레가 망보 텔라 망보 남도 망보 텐데지기 나네 먼저 생은 내로도 또야 디스칼레카 브레스 땡인도자네 지 웬바때야데 그 개침부 텐데지레스는 저 웬베고 소는 거도와
And so this King of Samadhi Sutra is mainly dealing with the topic of samadhi or meditative absorption, and in particular, or Mahamudra, in particular, Mahamudra path, Mahamudra as the path. So as we went through finished with the 4th chapter last weekend, and this really was the response to Chandraprabha on his request on the asking about the meaning of samadhi. And so there are many different types of samadhi. There's a samadhi or meditative absorption on love, meditative absorption on compassion. There's an inconceivable quantity or amount of different types of samadhi. But here the samadhi that is being discussed or referred to is the samadhi of realizing the true nature of mind, or the samadhi which realizes the true nature of mind. And the way to realize that true nature of mind, or to have this King of Samadhis arise, is through gathering the accumulations and purifying obscurations. And so then we get to chapter number 5. And mainly in this chapter number 5, it is discussing that in order to give rise to the completely pure meditative absorption or samadhi, then it is important to resort to secluded places, to abide in solitude. That as long as one is distracted by a lot of activities and a lot of discursiveness and such, that it won't be possible for samadhi to arise. So a prerequisite to cultivating this meditative absorption is to resort to secluded places.
안데네 산제기 다우슈는 주발라 카르송도스나 다 가상 공도 띵인전 세야데 생게 내로 또바텔라 띵인전 세레스나 송바와 띵인도잔다 텐데게 띵인전데 줄라 줄지 제야긴 되바 연케 근데 텐데로 띵인전데 줄라 제네 조고 산제기 공판지 토군도 삼케 텐데지이나 근데 저 가르고스는 간전 지탱게 추라 배지 차신 셴바체네 되는 건 곳이란 거야요 말레스 저 가르스나지 내 왼발에 땡고레스 내 왼발에 땡바니나 되는 랑신 게드네 섬라 거지 신내지 토용이요레 섬 가세게 되는 시와 차송이나야 대세기 then Lantong shirab the shoe choy in Guru, what in the Indu Sanjegi, the Ujunla, or Tene, Tad, Nepen, Nevembala, Hava Chagures, what in the Jixon on the Waderma.
And so what the Buddha then tells Chandraprabha is that in order to realize the true nature of mind, to give rise to this samadhi, which is the realization of the true nature of mind, then it is for someone who wishes to attain the state of Buddhahood, to quickly attain the state of Buddhahood, it is necessary to diminish attachments or to let go of the attachments to the things of this world. And letting go to attachment to the things of this world, one should abide in solitude in secluded places. And when abiding in solitude, then naturally the mind will become pacified. Naturally, one can abide within a state of calm abiding. And through that ability to abide in a state of calm abiding, then insight will likewise eventually arise. One will give rise to vipassana.
Te Induzane, Tandante, Ta, Pena, Nazocita, Tene, Taji Sanjegi, Chu, Nyamsul, Language, Jumsen, Zone, the Karchadure, Saint Zane, Tringaranzo, Samadaji, Jibuji, Toyala, Hundebaji, Samana Jijurua, Debachibare, and Jibuji Yongundu, Dewoji Yongundu, Samgerua. Tetinajin Dunghegi Lode Mendeba Chibarwa, Dunghe Swin and Dugumarwa, Dunghe Gundu Sangen Chiayumare. Tati Induzane Tene Dunghe Yong Deada, Chibu Mayong, we get Zawa the Cartudur and the Tenichi, Sim Madruala, to the Resungurwa, and the Sim de Chita, Dabujamatune. Tenipe Sembena Namtonda, Medasha, Della Denetinici, Lunagi Chawan Dramada Cheta, Tenetine, Kandrangazo Chita. Dunge tang gange mambu ji yong yong yore ting de zane ta tene nanzu pen khangbe nang la duwa ji yuna ti duwa de pa changma duwa yorwa nanzu duwa khangbe nang la duwa kang ka cha de yuna ta nanzu duwa de pa mewa zoya guso go ro ting de duwa mewa zoya la tambu Towa Nyungseki Medicawandu Tarkurwa, Medicawandu Matawachi Taza, Towa de Machilo Tunjavina, Towa Junche Tumarwa, or Tinduzane, then Towa Yongsate, Maindu, Tekawandu Zejene, then Towa de Pamewazogu, Yorwatina Jinchene, Dungin Junseki, Zawade, Sem Shiwa Mayimba, Sem Tupo, or Tendejila Denetini Yonga Induzane, then Tanandine, Azo Karsanaji. Some shiver never get chedu, a cargosna, and a name but tangore, so that the nation is on weary.
And so when generally speaking, we often think, or everyone wishes to be happy. So often one is preoccupied with the thought, I need to be happy, I need to be at ease, and we don't want to suffer. Everybody wants to be happy and nobody wants to suffer. But the reason why happiness still evades us, or we are unable to find happiness, is because we are always suffering, is because our minds are not pacified. We are not able to gain control over our minds. And so we have all of these thoughts and afflictive emotions and constantly stirred up with the proliferation of thoughts. Then we act with body and speech motivated by affliction. And so therefore, there is never any end to difficulties and suffering. But in order to find happiness, first we have to pacify all that discursiveness of mind. So it is like if a house becomes filled with smoke, if we want to clear out the smoke, first we have to know where the smoke is coming from. We have to, if we don't identify the fire that the smoke is coming from, we won't ever be able to get rid of the smoke. So first the fire has to be identified, and then the measure measures can be taken to extinguish that fire. And so in the same way, the cause, the main root of our lack of satisfaction or happiness and the root of our suffering is this disturbance of mind, this proliferation of thoughts and so forth, and the lack of peacefulness and ease in the mind. And so in order for first to establish this peaceful abiding, then we have to adhere to secluded places or seek out solitude.
Tanda ne wembalaya tinichi laptop songwa yinam tene ne wembegi chechu zo de karayore sayende zane tene tanda di yungen pangtugre stangdo yungen ba sayende zane je nyomomba shedang jesegi yul chado jesegi yul ndocha jesegi yul ta tendegi yul ducha tensule ya ji jwene ne wemba do ji la des kusimbu chen de tu songwa yinam tene yurungen ba de pa pang songwa yin zane nyomong 같은 소년 칼에 kalma shuchung chung res kaisa no nyomong jeagi ujote jen chang mares ne wembala tene dinajin ne wembala lab songayina simle yingsa shida yo mares jida soso jigu kusimbo je wemba je dewa yina tene jin jamdala no sim yingdo sa shida yo mares tene indu zane gewegi lega de ranghin ge ya kong ne kong de pillim res 대장 마세 네 wemba je lab songayina churangi riba de be zama chaires riba sewo chayong res de chayong du zane de ji so so ge da lamen de ne dama shu je we ge tanda chu ju je we ge tanda tan zo to la ya be ji sewo ji cha do res jule ni shi je to res de yin du zane de mo ne ji wemba tan ya de de changju samban ne da la len ngo ma de yin se na so yin do ba o ti yin du zane ji dang ge da ji wemba tan se ya de be ke chen bu de ji yin ge yu sa da tan da le wen de na de so yin gu yo.
And so all of you are probably already very familiar with the verse in the Bodhisattva practices. There's 37 Bodhisattva practices which addresses this, saying that it's important to abide in secluded places. And what is meant by secluded places, by abandoning negative places or evil places, what is meant by this is that to avoid places that provoke the afflictive emotions. So to avoid places that cause attachment and aversion to arise, that avoid where you, or to avoid places that become a cause for any number of afflictions to arise. And so then staying quietly in solitude, little by little, without anything to provoke the afflictive emotions, they gradually subside, they become less and less. And in a place where there's of solitude, where there's not so much distraction, then also the virtuous endeavors naturally increase. Likewise, the mind becomes very clear, and it becomes easy to gain understanding of what is really meant regarding the pith instructions that we have received from our lamas, or what is really meant, by the teachings and these teachings and pith instructions, and we develop clear understanding of the Dharma. And so for that reason, it is very important to resort to secluded places. As Danilo Gosare. Okay.
Tene tina shendo tene tanda de nanzo joban jiden sumgon kitene ta song sabchu za chimbo jiro sabchu zinda mane sigro ta tina na kare sumbare isna jidan tene ne wemba ta pena ji shina gi na yana tene be jigitze la so wada tende gi ne wemba tenso la tene be ji sanje tenso gi be denha juyores ne wembe gi yente samjime chaba sanje ne song yores 대인도 전에 테네지 산제 남진 내웬베기 용된 송야기 점센데 가르치는 숨부여서나 내웬바테 라지 대투 송아이나 테니 모네기지 냠뇽 살바 또바 살바 그는 나소바 제투고 여바 인도 전에 산제기 배 나바지가레스 대나신도 내웬바테라지 랩투 송아이나 가람소 르당 아다 이 숨부테 메게웨기 토네 파티 타 링리 차투그레스 메게와레 파워 엠바 차투그레스 대나신도 테네 지 게와 뇌차 메바 셰당 메바 티무 메발라 소베기 연데 게웨기 테네 베 뉴바튼 소양 공리공도 양 필링고요레스 대진나신 딱 원에게지 랑중 차자 첨부 세고나인다 랑중 장축심 세고는 tun다 지바레 텐디 다 차자 첨부 공백이 내 뭐마데 테네다단데다 내 엠바테레스 텐데 인디 다 텐데라야 테네지 로토 송아이나 테네 연데 빠르 멤바테네 뒤를 지야요레 송 테네 내 엠베 연데 삼점에 제가 송용도와 다 테나신 만데네 조 산제게 테네 내 엠베 연데 송하다 텐조다 등 지바레도 텐데레
And so then also Lord Jigten Sumgun in his Tsindamani teachings from the Zapchu also expresses the qualities of the great qualities of resorting to secluded places. And when he says, in the sublime woodland groves of Samantabhadra, highly praised by the victorious ones of the past, one is fully secluded from the non-virtues of the three doors, not attached to the happiness of virtue, and without anger and unawareness, the strengths and qualities increase. This place where the self-arisen mind of awakening is cultivated, filled with devas, nagas, rakshas, and gandharvas, is where all the great sages have dwelled. And so first, it is all saying that all of the victorious ones of the past, all of the Buddhas of the past, have praised the qualities of secluded places, understanding that it is in these secluded places that one really has the potential to give rise to new experience, to actually develop some new realization, and also one is able to seclude the body, speech, and mind from non-virtue, but in resorting to places that are remote and solitary, and without attachment to virtue or the happiness that arises from virtue, and likewise without the arising of anger and ignorance, then the power of virtuous qualities, it just continues to increase, and all of these virtuous qualities blossoms, and the self-arisen Mahamudra or self-arisen bodhicitta, ultimate bodhicitta, which is the same thing, arises all on its own. And from this, there are inconceivable qualities that are that arise.
근데 다 대치도 산 단단히 되니마 이거는 뭐 디스 로그인 다 된다데 슈차인바 되네 좀 된다지 나고 주는 출발 가서 봐 주는 대대변에 전주 선바 선바지 뭐 땡기는 듯이 이도 나는 뭐 연타 보고 보시 이도 뭐 산재반데 거 그라 멤버 왔다 무슨지 파다마다 보다 보면 얘도 나비네서는 닌다 잘라다 충만라서 매진도 방은 자시지 대와 통지 침에 들어와진다 보다 금발라 문도 주지 시민은 금발은 좀 자오 대지지에나 주는 금발은 문도 주지 침면은 금발은 주고 뉴스 선바지 뭐 나는 뭐 연타 보고 보시 이도 거 많이 땡기는 듯이 못해 주는 대대변에 보던 자거든 얘도 나비네서는 닌다 잘라다 충만라서 매진도 방은 대와 탐진치면 들어와진다 보다 금발은 문도 주지 침면은 금발은 좀 자오 시주는 주지 더더 한번 자오 주는 대답에 논란데 니 주지 너들 버차데스 다티 버 드니티 슈구 주지기 잘로드네 지마 드나드니 산제기 롱지 로주지 송용도와 흠메기 중름지 슈구 주지기 잡드나 드네 산제 양진세야지 지금 걸라 당에 드니마 차상이 로그인 와 드니마 전에 데 슈구 주주 슈구 정하기 잡로기 예튼 타마드나 직제 직송도 대파드 딩고파드 땅에 된다데 당부지 슈윈으로 다 대파드 된다데 가르송도 sana tene ta sanje gi nge tene lorju ji sombare tene pe karba mangbu ngaro jigla tene sanje yangjin seya ge sanje ji jiden khawso pebares ta sanje yangjin seya ji jiden khawso pebe ge gyusu tela tene zambuleng de gana pe japo ni yores japo top 10 seya ji dan japo top 10 seya ji top 10 bu yin ken seya ji dan japo top 10 bu yin ken seya ni yores 다 콘존이라 빼 journal 롱저다 섬님에 잡았는데 지금 답에 나 근데 지그레스 디 인도산에 아니 니마지라 다 콘존 얘기 단다 산지 양진서야 된된 슈도와 산지 양진다 아니 양진 코르다 년되라서보다 근데 망보 진나나 된된 슈네 아니 콘존 얘기 답에 산제다 년된 코르다 제발았더니 세그 다지 육사 다든지 빼 망보 푸여다 삼님 메셔버드는 부용비어데 무기요래 코니 개와빼 자치모 두기요래 근데 전에 개와 두는데 산지 양진게 되는 응시가 돈 쓰기도와 콘순이게 된대게 개외 내가 가르치는 지기요 같아 딱 콘순이게 개외 내가 대 가르치는 지기요래 saying 전에 지다 코란이 빼 맹첨보토야 드니빼 벤줄 롱주 다동의 첨보 차야 드니빼 코르망보토야 다 텐데기 깨다 전부 자야기 무유고 돈에 건조게 되네 건조니게 산제 코드 제발다 소는 거 조자 전부 저 싸되게다 대사 용도 전에 되네 산제 양진기 된 첸네 그러와 다 건조님문에 개와지 싸는 싸긴도 이내야 제우시다 맹킹기 개와지 싸긴도 공부하다 제우자 전부시다 톱무토베 개와지 가인서는 소소 라니 지부 체도 맹네 개와 사기 유장 개와 총총레 개와 자총총레 이 인도잖아 다 콘순이라 삼바페 양다바지 줄레 제공도 공네 근데 산제기 다 되네 마드네 직제가 돈에 되네 모든 나용도와 뭐 대인다 대파도 담보 대체로와
So Khenchen Rinpoche said that he will continue reading through the text, and he's just going to summarize for us what it says, the part that he will read, and then he'll pick up again further down when the verses begin. And so what this is referring to, the Buddha here, is telling a story of a Buddha in the past who appeared many incalculable eons in the past, named Buddha Goshadatta. And when he appeared in the world at that time, there were two kings, Mahabala and Dridabala, who were also had many great inconceivable qualities. And so one day they invited the Buddha Goshadatta together with his retinue and with their own retinues, their entire kingdom and ministers and so forth. They made many offerings to the Buddha. They engaged in an elaborate expression of virtue. And offering, clothing, really exquisite clothing and delicious food and all of the finest things. And so then the Buddha Goshadatta, with his clairvoyance, saw in inquiring or looking what is the real objective with which all of these offerings are being given. He saw that it wasn't with the purest intentions, that it was with the hope to, gain a good reputation, with a hope to accumulate merit and become even more wealthy, with a hope to become famous and so forth. And so with this objective, these offerings then the Buddha saw that they were so much less extensive in the scope of their merit than they really had the potential to be. because of the fault of the one, in giving these offerings. Their objective was really limited to their own self-interest. And so understanding that if they could come to realize that with a much more vast and altruistic intention, that the fruits of their offerings and their virtue would be so much greater, then he spoke the following verses, or the verses which then come later in the text.
Stangi techi ma lowe da dronde shunu de de banan da shunu da ro da shunu mo jwan de no go chama ba che chama ba ja jo go ma san je ba jo do me ba jo ba de no de jo ro jo do san yan je che jo ro san do do shunu jo jo do jo ma 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 san je jum de de je de do shung mo je de jum de de no de de jo ro jum do san je yan je de ni de ba thong mo na san je jan ro jum ba che da jo ra je jo mo ni de ba ni ba na ro ju je ba ro do jo jo mo de ba ma na ro jum ba che ba ro ju jo mo ju ba sum ba je mo no chu san ba ba da me ba da jo mo je no de 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 jo ro ju mo no do ba san je de 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 no yi no jo mo de jo ya je ba de wa ho nyam ga che wo da ma ma ba ko ro ju do do le de no je bo do de na to chin shi ni ji na so jo ba je ba de wa lo Nyamga waje oda mama ba kama chela mama waje shune de chela mama waje ndu yo do so je no do so je waje ne je bo do chimba number je ba ka so ni shuna ta je bo chimba do je ne de ba do so je do je ba do je no ma ga no ge le je sa na so na na ni so ma na yo je ta wa kun de je ba ro wa kana wa da me ba lo ja dong sa ma jin ta so je no de se de kun ne de je ba da je ma ne bo do ba so ni je de je so ma kin ni de ge ne ta ni ba da ba da ta ba che ba je do de no da da ge je no de je do san je san je yang je chen ju sun be ge de da je ba ni de je ge ne da ju la ni ba da ko de che che do ne de je ba da je ma我做过3年，这个是在现在大概都在做多情不就是，路经济的市场这边你把这个的这辈子怎么就用这帮兄弟，我做3年，这个你就是这毛3年，咱那这种到处就养活弄的，这些习惯弄这种你们都在这一块，你说到他们这帮都在你们都在给我跟个关注过来，有时候你不能就在3年在那这都，这些那的那的的，我到那那的的，是那个习惯的的3年，那这个这那个现在都来进步事情嘛，都没习惯的给这我心，他都完全没有都给做，他都完全可能那么的把不习惯了，现在把他他去没。他都你也是觉得了，今年就拿那个去进去吧，就今年的天气往去吧，就把那去去把它消耗，像我觉得天天气吧，这个是你养鸡特色，结果中间特别是那叫把它消耗工呢，是不是就把那个松树，他电影就咱呢搞铁对的呢，加不你个样，他就可能做滚红当金巴当等做的，就每次的几乎个切的金巴当个的话，天南线都加不铁当这位个慢慢等做个样。那是三节啦，当绝把配对咱那样，趁那个，他那这个电器几乎切得到，给我他那这个啥那个的话，第三个他那三节阳间个，但是早晚你能这个门都公布的，第一个咱那这单他呢，这点送这个呢，开始送有的是得送的话，那就给我就稍微告诉，他本呢，金巴就当完呢，金贝我不去当完呢，然后他呢。최바지 풀와이나 다 된대게 레가데 지바래 먼저 진바지 땅와래 최바지 풀와래 이는 근홍 그 돈은 제국에 제발씩 침부 차용 거여와 다 메센데 지부 지도 땅와이나 메센데 지부 그 돈을 좀 그러대 근데 메센데 잠만이 봐 제와 치만나서 봐 팽야지도 땅와이나 되게 제와 치만나서 봐 지도 팽거여대 근데 산지게 금방 토야지도 땅와이나 대라 때는 산지게 금방 톱톱에 주차하는 거예요 대인도 전에 거지 내가 지과래 돼 이는 끊어온 돈은 제고 최종되는 중도와 대체도 되는 지된 성공 가르송 말에서는 나도 당보 그네 끊어온 야보디 제가 배 개침을 해스 배는 추기 파르라 무슨 로고요나 둘로 태만이 젠지 맞지 송가래 당그마 삼바요 말와 추디 파르는 로고는 둘로 태만이 주나 제올로고 말에서 당보 그네 둘로도 야보 제올로스는 바 갑도 주스 데모도 파로 오타 형사 말해서 양 주요야 둘로지 젠체나 두서 뭐 초란도 그랬대 디난신 인도산에 당보권의 근홍 자체와도 고래 송도와 따뜻한 데네야 자고튼 저기 근홍의 충충이 인도산에 산재기 된 지금도 상도와 산재기 근홍 주와 다야게 치르다 산재기 마다 람도에 남겨는데마
And so in this case, as the two kings were making all of these beautiful and elaborate offerings, yet their motivation was limited. It was really limited to self-interest and worldly concerns. Then the Buddha, seeing this, wanted to correct their mistaken intention, understanding that with these offerings made with a limited intention would only reap or give a result in a very limited fruition. So Lord Jigten Sumgun stresses that at the time of accumulating virtue or gathering virtue, whether practicing generosity or making offerings, the action is the same, but the motivation can be very different. And it is really the motivation that determines the scope of the result, or determines how vast and extensive the result may be. So if the motivation is a concern for this life, or that one wishes only for results in this life, then it will only lead to results in this life. If one wishes for results in future lives or benefit in future lives, then it will only lead to benefit in future lives. If the motivation is directed toward awakening and Buddhahood, then it will lead to awakening and Buddhahood. So much most important is the motivation. And so for this reason, Jigten Sumgun stresses that it is so important to cultivate the highest possible intention or motivation. So likewise, he has said that it's important to have the purest of intention possible right at the outset, rather than first having a limited intention and then later developing a greater intention. It's like crossing a river, trying to cross a river twice, meaning, back in the day, if there is no bridge, then really changing your clothes or taking off all the clothes that need to be taken off or removed in order to cross the entire river is the most effective way to cross the river, rather than rolling up your pants or taking off some part of the clothing and then arriving at the middle of the stream or the river and realizing you have to come back and take off more clothes in order to fully cross. That it's much more effective to just take off whatever clothing needs to be removed in order to cross the river all at one time. And so in this way, it is important to have the purest motivation possible at the outset.
카촌에 콤바든 자와이나 손은 배침부 요래 세야지다와 네 웬발라 로얄 치도 마 슈니기데 네 웬발라 로얄 네 슈주루기 나라 네 웬발라 드네 콤바든 포나 드니 배손은 침부 요래 세야지 도에 네 웬발라 로얄 치도 컴파든 네벤백 초소 자바인 저는 배침부 요래서 당에 대보다 당고지 로네 등뒤 전화를 막 쉬는 봐. 짐바르 랍진 찍라 찍된바 펜트를 뭐 제면 좀 개발 버처럼도 공연 상대다게 된 바대면가 강다 소재 편서 추동 바텐데 메데 신도면 연다 찍라 찍지면 찍지 않아 진짜 제원예제도 제제에 만능 진행 사상하게 되면 메다메다 노근지 상생에 배출된 데마에다가네 돈을 요소에 배송되는 여대서 배출하고 요 강다 소장에 배가 되면 다른 니도 선인데 바람도 되게 보다 중간에서 이런 전화도 되게 너무 선주도 버주다 메모리 젠도 내보에 보다 중간에 야서는 너는 매진 nengojo 더 전주 주는 님에게 간다 심지어는 너진도 전주 담바주다 돈에 대해서 선제 그냥 뭐마저 보다 들어주고 하면 정말 힘들어라고 하면 받을 그만에 벌지 뭐라고 되나죠 자주들 매들한테 맞아 선제 보고 가지 많이 가봐 제가 선도서 가지고 도주 이제는 있는 거 맞아 만들 줄 알아서 지금 시험하시다 쓰는 거는 그냥 매달 나쁜 정말 매리가 맞지만 선도는 심지어 된전도지 영원의 그 맞아도 그 뭐되면 되는 손데 왜 제발 파스타 대바르다 가르송요래 생도산에 산지 양진기 산지 양진 세야 되기 단지 잘보당 담미만 된소라 단디 된다는 마 지금마 송바와 가르 송바에서는 다 된다대 지 지된 천디기 상징 아직 명년보당 연노롱주 텐데 지구 라사노당 갱기 메디나 디 메디기 내가 가르치나야 무슨 디 지구 그 된든 조리를 마도베 제와 치만라서베 강연 팽마레스 미르 텐데 지마도 메나 다 미젠다지 심긴나라지 무슨 디 지구기 롱주당 무슨 디 지구기 년다라서베 레와 메베 메지이나 그래 저랑기 개와체바 되기 왜 대한 전부지 듣는 줍도 그래스 근데 인도 전에 저랑도 드네 지금 최박표가 되라 섬기나라 이제 된 천디게 삼바 매바지게 돈에 드는 최박표나 최바대 삼림의 제배 평양 전부지 그래스 어떻게 지송
So what Khenchen just read through were these verses where the Buddha Goshatata is explaining to the king and his and the people or his retinue that somebody who is only concerned with material wealth, the material things of this life, acquiring reputation and prestige and so on, that when practicing virtue with this objective in mind, then the result, the ripening of that virtue will be very limited in its scope. If one is only thinking about the things of this life, then there isn't much benefit. But for somebody who has a very little interest in worldly concerns or the things of this life, then the result of their virtuous activities and offerings is very, very vast. That there's so much greater benefit in making offerings without any concern for worldly results.
니양 대마인 betunda 지 가르송에서나다 지땡기 출럽에 하장게 차단 셴바튼데 지부 제네 드네야 지 공코르데바이나 대안지 말에 스탠드 지땡기 출럽 셴바데스 총지 셴바 총야라는 배정소고 그래스 땡드 니나라 보다 총마도 상황 요구를 송양로 된다데 가르송에서나 전소라 차신 방구를 송거래 배지 제와당 전소라 지 로바 제고 말을 송거 말에 텐솔라 로바 치고래 텐솔라 나 제와 고그래 얘네 양배 차제 셴바슈 징보지 여바이나 드니 동해기 쥐차용 거래 대인도 전에 드니 셴바빵 고그래스 드네 대자마세 지 대지 웬발라 네트비아는 배전체스 가두이네 배 텔라 르 테와 나 테와 이 테와 지구도 되는 데 말에스 대인도 전에 웬베게 돌 데스 데트와 지고래스 베나 르 웬바 셈 웬바 나 웬바 세로와 대인도 텐데지게 돌 데스 데트와 이나 근데 펜도슈 침보지 용그래스 대인도 전에 드니 제단 남조 가스나다 지 네웬바라 데나 펜 섬제면 제바 여도여 계시 데 마토바이나야 땅아지 네웬바 지랑가 냠내지 제네 곰지 잡는가 대기 섬네 네웬베기 초라파 공부 된 점지 뽑아 있나요? 손은 체매가 사투 그래. 대인산에 아직 무엇을 되는 네웬바란 되네. 공잡 근데 제가 있는데 손은 여도요. 되네. 웬바란 로이 섬네 공부 뽑아 점지 거네. 손은 침부 사는 그래. 손발에. 대인산에 근데 지금 근데 제스는 다 대송도와.
So in addition to this, he is explaining that if one spends all one's time just caught up in the limited concerns of this life or worldly concerns, then one is just kind of spinning in this state of self-deceit and confusion. And so therefore it is important to diminish attachments, to diminish our attachments to this life. And so there are some words here about, abandoning one's children and one's spouses and so forth. But this isn't to say that one should abandon them by not caring for them or helping them, but it is meaning to abandon attachment, that there isn't any benefit in getting all caught up with attachment, that this will only lead to it won't lead to virtue, the virtue that results in liberation. And so then he goes on to also stress the importance of resorting to secluded places, where the body is not so distracted with many activities. The speech is not always occupied and busy speaking, and the mind is not caught up in a lot of thoughts and concepts. So it is really referring to finding this seclusion where the body can be isolated or secluded, the speech can be secluded, and the mind can be secluded. And when one is able to reside in secluded places like this, the benefits are really inconceivably vast. But then it ends, these verses end by saying, even if one doesn't have the conditions that enable one to abide in solitude, to just give rise to the intention to do so, longing for enlightenment and disillusioned with the composite, and for the benefit of beings, just by taking 7 steps in the direction of seclusion, they will have superior merit, it says. So even in just having the intention to stay in solitude yields great fruition.
다 드네마 드네양 된다 가르소는 것은 다 산지 양진기 텐데체네 지 줌센의 집에도는 송용도 전에 드니 저부터 친구도 다 하고네 다직 다 생각서 짐바땅에 잡았대 양지 성로 야고지 마다와이나 짐바땅와 대라야 손음 친구 유사마 와스타 대인도 전에最接受的 내웬발라 내야다 수주명다와 송야다 땡인전양다와 거야다 표현 친구인 바트리시다 송문도 당간조 하고 송선들이 그런도 참하게 되는지 다조 땡인전 거야다 되는지 내웬바땡야 그냥내 텐데도 전용도 전에 되는 텐소 배지 대우 푸숨소와 토백이 제와 대장만인 바 제와네 제와 차려는 차려 망부바도 근데 배 눈하기 맹장하면 같은데 차와에서는 송도와 어테인드잖아 텐소데 드니 가르세나 다지 내ven 바땡 거다 줌센의 집에 돈에 송바트리 지인사래 단들의 망이지 로생.
So then, following this, then the king Mahabala exclaims that, or states that with these instructions from the Buddha Goshadatta, he's come to understand that by simply practicing generosity with a limited motivation, that this doesn't result in a great amount of merit, but mainly to resort to secluded places, to practice ethical discipline, and to practice samadhi, to give rise to samadhi, that these are the most important. And by practicing samadhi or giving rise to samadhi in secluded places, then the fruition will be truly abundant, extraordinary, and vast, and from lifetime to lifetime will result in happiness, which also becomes even greater and greater happiness, where not even the word of suffering is heard for a very long time.
And
so then he will read from here.
And you know, Jim, the danger was and Pajinje, Chimney, Betum, do change it to Naja and Chitradak, Jim, the Shebe, and Shiva, and Najum, then a Jimbe, the Simbe, Nava, Juji, Jim, then a three of the Simba, and do that, Jim, the Jason, do number of some Jivaration, never doing not so she's some net in the Yadajin, never gonna have a church in the Devontae of the Juvan Home and in the over the Kumanagation, over the Joan, the relation that 양지 가서 좀 나중에 내대 좀 나고 나중에 가서 가지고 좀 되는 이거 체인지 하고 있으면 많이 좀 여러분이 만나면 근데 제가 저는 저도 되는 많은 거 이런 뭐 이런 다다 커버를 되고 그냥 나와는 너지만 좀 아무도 나중에 되는 거 되게 그건 좀 와지 나는 뭐 매점 저라지도 좀 되게 여기서 와서 이제 그걸 봐지 와는 이제 봐는 거 보면 산에 다 니셔는 인글리시 이제 와다 좀 이제 되는 데 저 산지에 들어서 모완다 살라라도 내바데 신조 정도 찬좀 선제의 신조된 대접은 정도 되는 도시 지역이나 되게 제공해 주시고 대나오냐 저보도 전에 버리고 판단하면 손전을 되게 저거들은 너랑도 정말 거제니 눈섬제 지마대 예지도 대신 지원하고 대지대 다들 주민의 대지반이 마음을 지고 담았습니다. 네, 내가 여러분은 아이들만 들어서 영화 준도인데도 사실 대버시고 장출라바다 침내 니바도 많다 여러 출라들라 주지 조인 지금 조되는 소리로 서다들 어떻게 되나 아니 보면 많은 순간에 주진 전주에 잡으면 정말신도 이제 system 소재도 요즘보다 저보다 여러분이 보내셔가지고 저보다 야는 선생님 되는데 제가 내가 이라고 되는 거예요. 왜 대로 장시라도 여도 주제 그리고 제가 이유도 뭐는 나는 누구도 말해서 나는 얘기를 해서 가지고 저도 대다시만 선생님 다해서 보면 보다니 선생님 제가 뭐는 선생님 저도 이제 선생님 15번 지는 건데 이거 장주 급의 제도량에 대해서 산지 너네 제도도네 소리에 너의 준도도 나면 조분유는 엔진 레벨에 나바고 단디 리웅아베기 tinjuunju 도와지다 특제 다시 지도와 디나한테는 가르송도 선ам 리웅아베기 다진주 도와 네, 산지 단진디 양진기 되니 잡고 똑친 다 등소를 되니 다지 짐바당와 지구근 되게 말해 다 수준 소야다 땡인지 공야다 백해침벌에 송바와 근데 송네 다 고난 쪽에 있는데 하고네 근데 이제 산지 단는데 양진긴 되네 그 땡인지 잡고게 된다데 건조그 쉬도와 근데 산지 양진 그냥 땡인지 잡고인데 송 땡진군술 근데 건조그 땡인지 되는데 고민도 산에 텐델라 되네 근데 제와 빠도 매발라 되는지 대화단 덴바 제와 장보토 같은데 좀 근데 치수 단단데 제부터 친해야 돼 몸으로 상제다와 공근의 상제백인 생라 산지 28와 세가 산지지 총수도와 산지 28와 세가 주송하래 어딘나신 근데 제부터긴 코르당 다 심신신 같은 소리에 근데 몸으로 상제 송 같은 지레스 다 산지기 다우션을 주발라 동데 송나와와 근데 인도산에 다 동게 된다데 대인도 전에 땅아랑 쪽에 근데 땡인적인 자본다 공야대 백해침불에 스나는 산제 그냥 나오주는 주발다 대송바인 바래 어떻게 되는 레웅아바를 사와래
So then, with these verses at the end of chapter number 5, it is again recounting the story where the Buddha Goshadatta is explaining to the kings and King Mahabala in particular that it is not sufficient only to practice generosity, it is also necessary to practice ethical discipline and to give rise to samadhi. And so then, inspired by this, they take up the life of homelessness and become ordained. And then for many lifetimes, practice these supreme teachings. And in particular, meditating on this King of Samadhis from lifetime to lifetime. Then the King Mahabala eventually attains awakening, fully perfected Buddhahood, becoming the Buddha Janashura, together with all of his kingdom, who also become enlightened. And so this is the meaning, kind of the condensed meaning found here in chapter 5, stressing again the importance of practicing this King of Samadhis. And so that concludes chapter number 5.
양절드네 산지기 나오주는 주발 가르송 바르스나 나주는 주랑 드네 양지 띵인진데 줄을 제약은 되봐요 대돈에 조보 산지기 공방 토벌인데 근데지이나 다 띵인진데 용수 장고를 담보 먼저 띵인진데 제야라 배준 제고요레스 다 띵인진데 제야라 배준 가르고레스나 주랑기 개와 칸데지 싸바이나양 티 개와 데라 조르와 당 무지당 죽숨보데 양타바지 고레 스테페 캐치모레 송거 단데마 티인디 조르와라 카리고레스나 군홈데 테네지 심chen 탐체라 닝지 침보 제고레스 닝지기 심나 슈고레스 조르와텔라 닝지기 심 테네 무지기 값소 아직 대신식 발라 죄바 풀고레스 다 대신식 발은 죄바 쓰인데 저는 남자 이 다보는 뭐지 타지나 소요와 지 다서 메토당 뿌려서 봐 풀어 찍고 말와 죄바 되라 테네 상승기 죄바 쓰는 지금 거요래 테네 시주긴 죄바세 지금 시주스는 샵치쇼와 텐도 대신 땡닝이 나나 용도와 상승기 제당 시주긴 죄바당 테네 숨바 누른 죄바세도와 아티인도 텐데기 무실라 주변 죄바 랍 주변 죄바세도와 아야 다 텐데기 죄 같은 졸라 무실라 죄 같은 졸라 든 준리체스 테네 텐데기 다 삼바 닝제 조 다단디 무지 죄바 단 죽라 가름 모는 모와 같이 그러스나 다 저랑 개와 강사관데 띵인제 양타고 줄에 제버 쇼스는 호고레스 나라 띵인제 저번데 줄에 제버 쇼스 야나 찾아진부 또고 줄에 제버 쇼스는 호와잡고레스 대마도 지 나드네 지데 쳔데기 대외기 체도 제와 지는 뭐는 되게 말레스 롱주 토비아가 제도 뭐는 되게 말레스 토리 하던 맥이 르 토비아가 제도 뭐는 되게 말레스 대인도 자는 다 제와 가르쳐 버렸으나 드네 또버 줄에 제야서 드네 뭐같이 쓰는 송도와 대다 된데 송는 거예요 대인도 자네 땡인지 정해야 되다 대래 송래.
So now we are on chapter number 6, Cultivating the Samadhi. And so in order for this Samadhi to arise, in order to be able to cultivate this Samadhi, here the Buddha is explaining to Chandraprabha what it is that is needed. So for one who wishes to give rise to this Samadhi, for one who wishes to swiftly reach the state of Buddhahood, then it's necessary to make effort in cultivating the Samadhi. And how is it that this cultivation is supported? What is it that becomes the condition for the arising of this Samadhi? Here the Buddha is saying that there are these 3 aspects that are necessary in the practice of virtue. Whatever virtue it is that is accumulated, there is the beginning, the intention or the motivation at the beginning, there is the actual practice, and then there is the conclusion. So what is it that is needed in the beginning? What is needed is in the beginning is the completely pure motivation of great compassion, the genuine wish to bring benefit to all sentient beings. And then the actual practice, or the main part of the practice of virtue, here is explained as making offerings to all the Tathagatas. But this is not just sort of, one level of offering. For instance, as is said in the Jewel Ornament of Liberation, there are the different levels or types of offerings. There's offering material things. There are the mind emanated offerings, but here actually he explained that there's the offering of service. So attending to spiritual teachers and such. And then there's also the offering of practice, the supreme offering of practice. And so to make effort in the beginning to cultivate this pure intention of compassion, and then to engage in the actual practice as was described, and then in the conclusion to have a pure dedication. But here the emphasis is actually to make it an aspiration. May the King of Samadhis arise in my being. May this virtue lead to the true and direct realization of Mahamudra. And so it's very important to have this objective of the ultimate goal. Otherwise, if the virtue is really confined by the aspirations for worldly existence, then it will only lead to a very limited ripening. So wishing for wealth in this life, or even the hope to be reborn in higher states as gods and humans and so forth. So in that way, the dedication or the conclusion should be sealed by this pure aspiration for the realization of Mahamudra, or giving rise to this King of Samadhis, generating this King of Samadhis. It looks we've lost Khenchen, maybe. So he lost the connection to his internet.
가르치는 즈바스 멘타이레스 즈바스에 가르치는 즈바스레레스 찌기도에 다트마 카시에지도 되게 렌트 마치 슈나 삼스타게 담보 대포도 마치 로이면도
So Khenchen Rinpoche will read up to the point where it says folio 19.a, which is in verse number, in the margin it says 6.7, where it says what is patience, what is meant by patience, or the concordant patience.
Oh yeah. Tene 좀 된데 제도 좀 주발라 가자고 주는 대대회나 좀 좀 땡긴데 노jen주들 많이 너도 상주반데 베는데 요소 장나 저거 주는 데라 등등 요소 장마 하시나 이주는 데라 전주 좀 이제 좀 쉬고 선지도 이제고 원하는 데는 주고 손님은 맞는 나가서 바다에 나오면서 쓰는 집에 와서 내게 왜서 바다에 내도 요소 어디 지금 가만히 왜 저래 되지 지금 좀 이런데 걸 봐만 나주가 소리나 된다 이제 뭐 주고 하는 게 그래서 이제 그러다가 이건 Juno de Dona de Juna Chiva and the Jivamando, the new member, the number of members, Juno produce when Chiva, the Chiva, and the Ujuno Chiva, so the Jiva and Jero, the one no Jiva, and you don't have Java, and the zone that were young man, you tell her one Sunday Chiva, the issue with you, Sunday to much. God the same jig on the Puchin down the jig on the Java, the same day, Java Mission and the end, and shows on the person with the Matron, what you were doing, major comes a son of the day, some young legislation as a the younger generation, that's and do some machine just stand at Twashi the Wa, Kidan Karsanatane, Kong to Tanda Karson, not until the Jorwa Simji Tela, Tane. 단단히 닝지기 생기 토네 되는 무지 값수 산제라 줘봐라 소바 주기 값수 되는지 다 대대고 개와대 땡인제 양타와 줄을 제와 쇼세 되게 치도 뭐와 다 되는지 제와 있나 되니 저바 줄을 토그레스는 소리는 와 땅문에지 추 찾아 침묵 되나 인지 짬에 집에 저바 세야 줄을 토그레스 되지 소말에 Atin du Zane Andilla Tema Twatting, Zuba say the candidates, Zube, Chichlina, Zube Mendotas, Zuba say the carres. Tenitina into Tendegi, Joru G Sungutone, Tenichi, Tingenzing, Jula Chewe Chedu, Jungu Jisungi Gewa de Sabayina, Teni. Jisun tumba chagre songdoa gana tim ta jisun tumba sede kares ena shindu tingin zende jula jewa ina chirmudoba chagre songdoa tindu chirmudoba sede kares tene tingin zende yangtaba jula jewa ina chanchu samba se lagre songdoa chanchu samba sede kares ta ti chwa shede lewingware
So here, as it says, in the context, so first there are these questions, and in the margin it says 6.9. So beginning with, why is this termed patience? So what is being said here is that first we have, with respect to, the beginning, the pure motivation at the outset of compassion, or the attitude of bodhicitta, and then the making offerings or sustaining the practice of offering to the Buddhas during the actual practice. And then at the conclusion, having the aspiration to really have a meditative absorption, the realization of Mahamudra arise in your being. The result, it is said here, is that the result of this is that patience will be born in the mind stream. And when patience is born in the mind stream, this is referring specifically to the patience that doesn't have fear when faced with the profound meaning of Mahamudra. So first it says, what is termed patience? And then so when this patience arises, the result of that is a concordant patience in which one follows sort of in the kind of example of pure conduct. And then through that, one reaches the level of the non-regression. One doesn't fall back from the bodhisattva intention. And then that is the definition, or then that one is a bodhisattva. And so it has these four questions here. Why is this termed patience, and why is it called concordant? For what reason is it said to be non-regressive, and why are they called bodhisattvas?
Oya, that what Hamburg lent la Karasum Barisana, Tane Ranshin Dami, Chula Tezote, Dami in the Shipala Newman, Chunatam Janamkachi, Tesil Tela Zebem Das, that is on the Zane. Tang around so penajin Krotoma, Meban Dado and Zimbatra, Kumji Peshuchimurwa. The Indusane, Da Yomares, soon doing other taste in Jitachi on Rochi. Da Mevares, Lusan to taste, somebody they were Mevan Rochi. Da your Guru, da Yoruan, didn't do us something. That Casey, Muneg is about Jula Jevaina, Dami Tensong in the Sanitary Page, similar Nishi Yantava Jetovaji, Yongures, Nishi Yantava Jayaraji. Then a Titone, Chu Tamche Tang, and Naranzo Gunzula, Zuda, Rola Sobata, Chundama Mambu, Nam de Yorete, Ditamche and Namkanajin, and the Tombani Ranshin, but Munegi Nishi Jeva. Chu Tamche de Nelo Chaja Chimbu Ranshin, but Yichi Jeva. Tendiji Chongayina. Then tell us Zeba Sanavires. What is somebody Zeba Sayade?
So then it says, their patience being for the selfless nature of phenomena, those who perceive selflessness have no kleshas. They know that all phenomena are like space. That, therefore, is what is termed patience. So this answers then the first question of what is patience. And so first, this is addressing the patience in the face of the true realization of the meaning of selflessness. Because we have wandered in cyclic existence since a beginningless time, the imprint for self-grasping is so strong. And so when there first arises some inkling of the truth of selflessness, there is maybe some discomfort, there is some doubt that arises thinking, oh, but there is a self, I feel a self. But when this understanding of selflessness grows deeper, then there is real certainty that arises with respect to the perfect meaning. And one starts to see that all the phenomena on the relative level is really all that is perceived through the doors of the senses, smells that are smelled with the nose, sounds that are heard with the ears, flavors that are tasted, and sights that are seen, and so forth, are all empty, the nature of emptiness. They are empty like space. And one really develops certainty with respect to the fact that all phenomena truly are the nature of emptiness. And so this is, that certainty is this first type of patience.
Tenetinashin ta Tewa Nibatrua, Jason Tumbe Zepa said Carre Sayat. That Jason Tumba said an Disumbares, Java Kunji, Jason Tunupchi, Kebaten, Chumi Mejude, Sanje Chula Tesum Mejiba, Ten Jason Tumbe Zebains. That's then Jason Tumbe Zeba said Sanje Tamchegi, Debe Sanje Tamchegi, Nyamne Kande Nam Yoba, Toba Kande Jula Jayobata, Tedan Tumbal Flopching. Sanje Tenzu Langa Kande Jilla Pevunaya, Tendro Jilla Naran, Drotuan Betsun Cheva. Roa, Sanjegi Lamle, Lam Jendaga Tola Mundoa, Sanjegi Tembe Lamgatola Hoba. Then Titone. Chu Mahimbegi Chawala Mejeba, Chu the Mentumbegi Lega Mejeba. Then a Sanjigi Songbe Chu Tsigjilaya Tesum Mezawa, Sanjigi Chu Tamchele Yichi Yuba. That Tendiji Chongayana, then it tell a Jason to Bezebas and Sumare.
So then the next verse says, is addressing the second question, which is what is meant by concordant. So it says, they train in accord with all the jinas. Those wise ones do not practice non-dharma. They do not doubt the Buddha's dharma. That is the patience that is concordant. So this patience that is concordant is saying, what is meant here is that then one has completely follows in the example of the Buddhas of the past, really emulating their practice and example to generate the same realization as they did in the mind stream. And then there's no danger of becoming confused or falling off the path. This concordant patience is referring to really staying, in the direct path of the Buddhas without changing to some different path, without going astray. And at this point, there is no possibility to really engage in conduct that is contrary to the Dharma. And likewise, complete faith without any possibility of doubt arising is there, so that one cannot even doubt even a single word of the Buddha's speech, but there's just this mind of complete faith.
저 숨바들라 니송도와 칼세 칠무도바스 러두선다 가르 송바르스는 칠무도바스에 당인들 망보진도 된다 노르드시는 슈인 벤나 내루 찾아 침북이 된라 선한다 야나 띵진기 된라 배 니시 양타바 땜보지 줄에 제투송아이나 대제와라 때네 드니 벤나지 강사 쟁게 수단 수게 있나야 주랑나다 오 주랑게 땡인데 노르든도 주랑게 땡인데 야보면도 주랑게 땡인데 드기면도스 라바 있나야 데라 드네트단데 지데 칼스 그래 배 주로지는 멘켄지 소소게 성은 오늘 니시 땡보 용켄지 로와 산지게 송백이 람 마너와 티토랑아란 랩투바 인자 다 젠다게지 오다 주랑게 람 같은 너와레스 라바 있나인다 주랑게 람데 드네 산지게 송백 람 마리스 라바 있나인다 나랑 있으면 오늘 니시 땡보지 제서와 인도자네 수직인 저왔다 못하다 되지 차도 봐이나 델라드네 칠모도 봐 스나트네 송바레스 어테레.
So then the next verse addresses non-regression. So even if all the Maras in the world transformed into Buddhas and said to such practitioners, enlightenment is too difficult, so become a Shravaka, they would not believe those words and would not regress. So this non-regression, again, is really referring to certainty. So when true certainty with respect to the meaning of the true nature arises, with respect to the truth of Mahamudra, when there is stable meditative absorption arisen in the mind stream, then that certainty is so stable that there is nothing that could cause one to question or doubt what it is that one directly knows and sees. And so no matter who it is, any individual, if they were to say, oh, your meditative absorption is faulty, it isn't correct, there's something wrong with what you are doing, that this would have no effect, because one would be so stable and so certain based on one's own direct experience. And so there would be no possibility of becoming doubtful or falling into other paths or going astray in one's path based on that. So this is really referring to, again, to that just complete and utter certainty.
인도산에 드네 쟁한 실험 중에 인사요 지금 송지요래 뒤송도 뺏는가 지금도 파가딘 쟁게 드네 다 공부하대 양타바지 또 툭송아 인자 미진다 동도 가르마 가르시는 간 지다치는 분도 소야 쓰지요래 다른 건도 호텔가 따와 있는 캔차 공부했는데 보쇼 로 직성 땅으로와 문에서는 니시 양타바 제소나 드네 그 지다로 자 용사 말와 배는 남서 드는 난가랑서 남주 드네 딱 불암사유로와 불암된가 모르와 당연히 남서 문에게 불암대 마사원 흘라 사만용은 흘라 불암간모 임바된 남서 망보 암초나고 이나 나랑 그것도 사만용을 qabla 야 니마치를 매지게 불암세된 간모 말에 줄모레 슬라비용이나 나 태숨 사시기로와 알레 오늘 이나 제시는 배지 줄모 인식이래 상으로와 가상가 사이가 말 나랑 속에 불암된 안소 사서와이나 다 되게 제라 미신다 용네 불암된 거 말이 줄모에서 나와이나 나 기모쇼로와 뉴바린도 상으로와 간사랑에 너무 이와 하코서와 팀도산에 문에게지 또바 줄을 제소와이나 근데 질문도다 근데 차인 거여서와 단단히 계속 그래요.
공타데 칭아 시럽 중에게
시럽 중에 디송으로와 파틴칭기 공바 파틴칭에서도 주반제 된 송공 공바들에 딩에 렌 투바 인자스 네 하쿠위바 인자 네 또바 인자 당가 미진다게 가르시아바 있는 같은 지다 자와는 면도 송여래 다들 돈다디 니시 양다고 줄을 젠로도 전에 되는 지라면 차로로와 베란트는 나지.
Chinga Shirab Jungne is quoted to have said, due to the kindness of the Great One, being Lord Jigten Sumgun, there is no way, I've given rise to realization, and so therefore there is no possibility to, like, I'm completely fearless. I don't have any fear regardless of what anyone might say. And so this statement might appear to be kind of strong or arrogant, but actually it is really based on what it's referring to is this level of confidence that is developed when there is direct and true experience. So when there's complete certainty in the true nature of mind, there's just complete certainty, and there's no possibility for any doubt. And so it's like, for instance, he said, when the example that is often given is that of eating sugar or molasses. So until we have tasted molasses ourselves, no matter how much someone might explain, oh, molasses has this and that taste and it's sweet, we still don't really know because we haven't tasted it for ourselves. So before we've tasted it, somebody could come along and say, actually, molasses isn't sweet, it's sour. And because we haven't tasted it ourselves, we might say, oh, okay, maybe it's sour. But if we've tasted it ourselves, then we know it's not sour, it is definitely sweet. And so if somebody says molasses is actually sour, we'll actually laugh because we know what molasses tastes like. We don't have any doubt.
Oh yeah. 다더니 다 장주 선바서야지도 다 장주 선바서야 돼 간지 고르서 이 장주 선바의 배체 통보고 장주 선바래 장주 선바서야 돼 간지 고래 송도산에 실업기 돈에 최탐체 동반이 바 셴바 실업 친구 돈에 최탐제랑 지금 동반이 바 셴네 녀모바 남당 현지도 메네바 녀모 탐제바 다와 이는 되네 군주점나 다지 심진 주마다 문남도 심진도 좀 맥네 hin지 친구 장신기 제된게 아 텐데지가 장주 선바스라 요래 송바다 장주 선바스야 돼 변나 따웨기 돈에 추탐체라시 동반이 바 셰데바 텐데기 좀세나 되네 소소기 생명은 영문바 탐체 다 된게 이는야 제와 hin지 친구 돈에 군주도 주마다 문남도 주지 심전에는 hin지 제된게 다 텐데지 요바이나 델레트네 장주 선바 선명 따고래 선어다 텐데지 송용하래 된다 배지 저와든 좀 내는 텐데트네 송도와 다 된도 나랑 소야 다 지금 텐데지기 람가 지기 돌아 레야라 네바당 모남당 호와당 다 텐데지 난고 있어.
And so then, as it says, if they know the incorrect view of beings, they say this is not the path to deathlessness, so that they reject the wrong path and are brought to the true path. That is the reason why they are called bodhisattvas. And what Khenchen had just explained is that then a bodhisattva, so that the fourth question of what is a bodhisattva, is one who has realized this meaning of ultimate wisdom themselves. They understand the illusory, empty nature of all phenomena, and their obscurations of afflictive emotions are therefore fully purified. And yet, even though they understand the illusory, dreamlike nature of all phenomena, still on the relative level, they manifest out of great compassion and love for sentient beings. For those who are still confused by the obscuration and afflicted by the obscurations of afflictive emotions, out of great love for beings, they direct them to the pure or true path.
Yeah. 안드레마 레우 그거 차상지마 로생다 당에 레우 가로 단단가랑 속에 레우 마치 로생이 liu tu pa de ke ma chi lo yu da ka wa tu sana aya na te tra ju ba da la na je de 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 yong za san je zo jun ne ju ni ga ni du ji 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 se de han ya me ji yin men zen do ma ju sun je men de la do ji men che to be lam ne do ji lo be lam ba lam la lo be lam ba lam la zhen ba je lo be lam ba lam la zhen ba lo be lam ba lam la ju je te je sun ju sun ba shi je Denam Java can get when you don't send you to the Roman Elusion and also mention on the Chijas on the Division, photo relation and Yamunda, and the Devane, the man, the Jim, and there was one of the then and you made the teenager and one makes change and some women. They do some bar, they say the young and shown them 9 yet, and a many. Jadra can just use somebody and so when they the member was and you was somebody so the man they are using it on general also the one you remember to make him imagine and you know you but you might be in our room and the nation of what only go to Javan Sanjay Chen the nation and you never know the Jang in the team you were also you know the never him and you know him by you and the sugar but somebody who doesn't Tiyu moza ye chu de san je da la kan ga je sang bra ju de jang da la de ge de da chen ju de ma ju de chen ju ja da ju de ma ni ru ja de ye ge ma de ju de se so sam de gum do de de yin da chen ju ju ro da me ba yin de ni man cha wa sa dong ba da ne ji so de chen ju yin la me do yi wo so zong ba de de chen ju da ma do chen ju sun ba de ge ge ju da ji wo yin nam tan ne ji de la sa ye san je san ye de do wo so ye de me ji ka de ga ma ji an gang ge ji ma de se ye de ne se ye ju ba yin de san ji yin yan je yi ji bu ji ha wa ju jian de me ji de ji se je ma na ju ye ji be me yan de da de Tendi zebasum seyachilatin labore sonyodawa o tenematni shya.
So then, as we move into chapter 7, which is the attainment of patience, here the Buddha is explaining to Chandraprabha, as you are somebody who wishes to generate this samadhi and you wish to swiftly achieve the state of Buddhahood, you should develop the 3 types of patience or abide within the 3 types of patience.
Atenya tamung intermongon tis malone tene jumne de do jun jula ga dra ba jun te de na ju sum ba jumbo de ngin de na do jun de la na ma ba yan do zo bo jun ju ro zo san je ba de be zo ba sum ji lo je ba lo zo ba sum ro ju ro zo ba ni ba do ju ro zo ba sum ro ju ro zo ba sum ni je ba ro ju ba sum ni ju ba ga ju de jun na da nam je zo ba sum je ba zo ba sum ni je ba ga ju zo ba sum ni lo che bra ka ma ju ba de de yo je zo ba sum ju ni do de de do do zo ba ma do so ju ju de de ba sum ju ma do zo ma do so ju do ba sum ju ju na zo je zo je ni ma je na ba 대라 지오마 바다 지오마 도 이들네 지오가 하도 하는 도지로 도지는데 도 요지고 저거 숨만 주고 주제는 다 수도 제가 연지 양도로 된도스 다 대송도 전에 단단 되네 믹스에게 다 저버숨 세지다와 지단 남중간도 전주 된소나 양 저버숨 선에 송는 거요와 변나 동해 당랭기 저바 세야지 딱 먼저 지 강해단 동해 칸데 중앙이나 된소지 소소문에 당랭지야지 딱 먼저 Korwan dinang jetsarwa yinzang dunghe yongdayong samandrawaji dunghe tangnen Tene soso la nöba chengen chi yudu yongwa yina nöba chengen ki kansa tenzo yong ta ngarangi chi jewang hume ki lewa na tene chungwa de samya tendu zöba niba tene zöba sumba de chi chuge nelu ta chi shedang tende je yongro chiwe kabla chuge nelu tongba nyegi tuyanga gomjaya ta tende chene namjun zöba sum rawa chi sungu yorwa 다 단다양 되네 대당 들어가지는 되네 저버숨 되네 지 수용도 되는데 된대게 저버숨 보텔라 다지 고미알라베 케바 연계 강사지나 되네 띵인진 줄어지야라 되네 레하오레스 되네 가서는 저바데 데스 요소이나 심데스 컨트롤 중앙인 거와 심 컨트롤 중앙이나 되네 심 시월 내가 슈 치와 연거래 되는데 전에 준주나라 가르송 버스나 나 tene shedang ge nacha de sembu na nya de ba ina tene 강에 가려 요래서는 나 체는더니 니고 말해스 님의 거나야 세양 칼라양 드네 지다 사두 말해스 드네 선바대야 배 템부메바 찬로레스 다배 시단게 심 투용도 전에 담만다 선 코링으로와 어떤데 인도잖아요 근데 시단 뽕야게 지도 즈발은 낸된 제고래 소용도와 대인도나 난데야 근데 즈바숨마다 클럽고레스 즈바숨은 케바차나 근데 땡인데 줄지야 레라고 차그레스 대소용도
So here, as it's addressing the three types of patients, so ordinarily in the Bodhicharya Avatara, there are the three types of patients that are referred to, which is the patience of taking on suffering or patience in the face of suffering. So this is the attitude that recognizes, because we are in samsara, of course, there will be hardship and suffering. And so with a mind of patience, we accept suffering. So this is a patience of accepting suffering. And then there's the patience in the face of harm doers, or in response to harm doers, recognizing that those who harm us, it's the result of former karma. And so therefore we can practice patience when receiving harm from others. And then there's the third patience is patience with regard to the innate nature, true nature. So this is the patience with regard to the meaning of emptiness, which also was discussed before. But here, there are these three types of patience, different three types of patience are explained, and it is saying that if these three types of patience are present, then it will be very easy to give rise to meditative absorption, to practice the meditative absorption. And the reason for this is because with patience, then anger diminishes, it becomes less and less. And so just as it says in the Bodhicharya or Avatara, with anger, when the illness of anger is held onto, one can't sleep at night, one often can't even eat food. The mind is just completely unstable. And so in this way, it's so important to make an effort to abandon anger, the mind of anger. And so as patience is the direct antidote to anger, then when there's patience in the mind, then it becomes naturally easy for the meditative absorption to arise in the mind stream.
다 되네 단단데 슈고 니슈기 기탄 타만한테나 다 즈베 고르드 소용도 다 즈바 탐고데 칸데지레 세드자네 소다 당이야 즈바를 메제징 되메 템베 쓰는 만하데 된다 출라 따바 rab도네 내다 즈바 탐고 셰바니 다 즈바 탐고 세데다 가르스나 심진 술이나요 지 심진 단 통보 마오 다 칸데지나 심진 포모 로체와 중앙 술이나양 되지 배 치기 통해 즈바 제야메와 즈바 메제와 가두이나 배가 안장보 마야 심상보치야 근데 당 디토라 드네 깨져셰베 가서냐 대매베게 치 메마와 깨져 가리셰와 있나요 대한도 덴바셰바
Looks like he has frozen again. So maybe I'll go ahead and just say what he's said, even though he's, or should we wait? Okay. So anyway, what Khenchen, so it looks like his computer has become frozen again, but what he said is that first we have this first verse here where in the margin it says 7.5. So those who do not argue or speak unbeneficial words, but always bring benefit and maintain the Dharma, such people are explained as having the first patience. So this first type of patience is any sentient being, no matter who it is, regardless of their position, whether they have high position or low position, whether they are male or female, whether they are young or old, with all sentient beings, to practice speaking kindly with gentle words, and also to avoid engaging in a lot of idle or meaningless chatter, but to speak words that are really meaningful. So these belong to the first type of patience. So now he'll read up to the part where it begins with the second type of patience. Simjin Gunjin, Trooper Menu, then is Zuba News Sheba Yins, Zuba Niba de Karasumbare saying the Zane, Tenepe, Shine Yanta, what Jula Jebek, Topji, Shine Yabu Yuvik, Jumsana Dene, Simdit Namtogi Pazu Yoa Meva, Jun Matuba, Namtogi Panjuatan Matuba. Tenin Hantong Yantaba Yuba Yinguzan, Simdipe, Jota Netuba, Jota Juba. Tene te toneda simjin sud suyin neba chinggengi da dawo kanji chungwa yina yang oda sim zawanen chu matuba o tenji chungwa yina da zuba niba de cha yung yore tene zuba ni su sheba yin sana songba da zuba niba de zo shineda hantong gi nyamne na tene tene ji simjin sugi yina yang ne sim de zhu dang matuba o tenji chungwa yina tene zuba niba da dembares o te song. So then the second type of patience begins with this verse, which says, they are unwavering through the power of shamatha, and through vipassana, they are like a mountain. Even all beings together would be unable to disturb them. These are the distinctive qualities of the second patience. So the second patience is based on these qualities of shamatha, or calm abiding, and insight, or vipassana. So when calm abiding or shamatha is born, through the power of that, all of the discursiveness of the mind is pacified and the mind becomes unwavering. Then this enables the insight to arise. And when the insight arises, the mind becomes extremely stable, like a mountain. And then at that point, there is no one that can affect or disturb the mind, no matter who it is. So once this stability of mind has been developed through shamatha and then vipassana, there is no way for, like one is invincible or undisturbed. The mind becomes completely undisturbed. Dini?
Nyambaraja Vashin Dojan, Danshin, Nyambaraja, and Dojan, Keva, the Nin, the Parojin, the Dazavan, Nyambaraja, and Muching, other than Muchina, and the Lemon, Dazavani, and the Shiva, Nyambaraja, the Bayasum, the Zazabani Vejavan, then I find the Sanjay, Chimichu, Shiva, the Zazabani Vecheva Rose, that's about Sumba de Karisana. Chardang, Flodang, Nudan, Changchotang, Dangdang, Wodang, Tejin Chongtang. 탐제 나인지 된 거모통 되는 저바숨바 땜바니 다 저바숨바 세야데 다지 샤르당 로 누블라소바 초시당 참제라소바 가와 따와 있나야 천육인지 되나 따와 있나야 나주게 심체나 따와 있나야 탐제 산제게 ran신인방 통화데 되는 저바숨바들에 다 계좌도 대송바다 최 탐제 되는 산제게 ran신인바 또바 통화 다 되는지 중앙이나 So
So then the third type of patience is explained by this verse where it says, they see the lords of the worlds in all directions, east, south, west, and north, above, below, and in the intermediate directions. These are distinctive qualities of the third patience. So what is actually being said here is that with the third type of patience, wherever they look, they see all beings in all directions, the entire outer container that is the universe, and all the sentient beings therein, as pure Buddhas. So wherever it is and whatever they see, all phenomena is understood to be the nature of Buddhahood or Buddha. Everything is the nature of the Buddhas.
Sergei Kadodogulo, Nura Samje Major, Drunane, Soja Cheva, Mona Chuden, and the Zozajura Sanjay Shinton, the Bulangana, Chanjusum Batten, and Jojitin, Hami Jaber, and those of Sumbe Jaber, Sanjay Jodi, Chodan, the Rishi, Jusum Batilla, those of Sumbe Jaber. Jitin come there some ginger, Chanjusum Bankava Jula, the Lajin edges of Garajin, Sanjay, Ilana Havayan, Jitin come there some use of Yusum Balan, and Digital Nature, Sanjay Chitimana, Benedict Major, Namani, and Magam. Redan Javis, the Zobos, Beche, Varuna, General, Samagama, the Tibetan, the Jivam, the Logan, the Valna, some of the worship, the messenger, Sayana, the Asian of the intelligence, the Jeruam, Jervan, the Majola, some danger, no Jigla, music, some better, and making Chiva. Namjila Mizuba, some models of which and some better than a Jeva than a Jewaman on the China commission, never told them the Dimban and the mother, Jingo, Tumba, Tajan, don't you mention all year on Jela, the chosen in the government in English. Some Jane Daggy, Jubilee, Ayatella, and other two measures, some Jane Tavaja, and Jodo, you got a getting to Jankeva, the Latour Major, the Mizula, the Nulaja, and the mother of Rajino children that are then Rajin, and Jason and so on, and they would have Ama looking at the running. So I don't know somebody, Chanjusan Bota was in Bagavaja, the Doshin, they were hovering in the Northern Chiman, major Jason River Mine, situation, major watching Buju, and I was a miserable, and never was much of a Yishipon Sanders on the Batan and Jeremy have a super you can never come and use the Banjubil with the Dimbo, starting to take a super sumbote, that Julia Jesomina. Tenica Segurity, Sanjegi, a compang, the Asian do the thing in Jabola soda, Julia Gialatani, Le Flowers, Julia Gale Kanya Mares, or Teen designer, Zuba Sumbotella, Chanju Sambanamchi. Tendegi Zuba Sumbotella, Tower, Labires, Telatin, Chanju Sumbatanzola, Zube Pen, some you may have 2 days and that is on the
So then that concludes the 7th chapter, which is essentially saying that by practicing these 3 types of patience, then it will be easy to give rise to or to generate or cultivate this King of Samadhis, which leads to the state of Buddhahood. And so all of the Bodhisattvas train in these 3 types of patience, which have inconceivable benefits.
Yeah. Tatani take all the time on the Jepat and Doduji showing Casan Jebate, Zoo Carsana, now Mubu Mepeki, Mebalachun, the rules on the Takanda Chutam Jeranjingi, Tinichi Tombani Ranjin Res, a Terran, that take it to that Jeff Shield, the Sanit and Liu Gubana Malay, and the Watati, the Liu Jebande in Gonzu. And then Liu Jeban and that Karsum Barsana Sanjegi, the Ocean Jubala. 다 장주 선바양 땡인진 단 자본의 줄을 제약은 되바 용ken다 산지기 공방다 지금 유로 토양 되바 용ken이나 근데 최담체 무범매병 모원이기 예시는 개발 자고래 수도산에 돈이기 되나더니 배 개발지 차도 제고래스 대인도 전에 최담체 되네 배 무범매바 최담체 모마도바 최담체 세만매바 라소바다 된대기 되는데 양타바지 시투송아이나 근데 자자치 못 도와주려 진도요래 ST인도 전에 다 텐조고 되나더니 개발 제고래 송도 다 된대 인도더니 최담제 ngubo meba yimbe jumsen chue tamjen tsema meba yimbe jumsen do sani guba kana ma songyong do tendu ngende ma jeba de lo jayin.
So now we get to the 8th chapter, which is titled Buddha Bhava Samudgata. And here it is really discussing the nature of emptiness, the lack of substantial nature, true existence. And so Khenchen says he's only going to very briefly summarize this chapter because tomorrow in chapter number 9, it will go into the same meaning in greater detail. So here the Buddha, in response to the questions of Chandraprabha, is saying, Chandraprabha, if you wish to swiftly achieve Buddhahood and to cultivate this King of Samadhis, you must realize the meaning of emptiness, the truth of the lack of inherent existence, the lack of the absence of characteristics, and so forth. And so then on chapter number 9, then it goes into greater detail as to why there is a lack of a substantial nature and why, or what are the reasons or the meaning of the absence of characteristics and so on.
Tema sepen lu gupen na tene ji ta chue dam je ran jin ma zhe ba yin zu de bei to na ma tene se xie ja qin bo na yu de wa ten de tene ten zu ge ton tene ngang zo san ni tene ji xue tene ji yin.
And so in chapter number 9, there are a lot of examples that are given to describe these meanings. And so then tomorrow we'll go into greater detail there.
And hey, I jump in the ocean, you like other version on the one. I use some bosom boarding and then they do change the line. I have a was of which and you and brother and Sanjo, the vision of maybe when you see like the version of you use some bosom bosom, but should be using about maybe when you see like a vanishing national television, use some bosom bosom, but should be using about when you may pass any Sema me ban sanyi me ba ma di ba ma ga ba yi me ba tong ba zo ma ye wa la yi na bu da ba yi ba zo de ba jo yi no ju su ma ji ma nam ju no ni ba ma ngo ni me ma tong ba sanyi me ba ma ji ba ma ga ba yi me ba tong ba zo ma ji wa la yi na ma da ba shi na ji ba de se da ni ba su ma ji je da wa ji na ju de je ngo ba me ngo ni shi na ga ba shi ye jo yi no ju ba su ma ji ma me ngo yi shi me ba da no zo da 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 ju de ju ba me je da me to mo je je ne no de ju de na de na ba su ma de ju de ma me de kong de cha da kong de ya kong ge cha ba da kong ju da kong de wa da kong Demo Wada, Demo Wada, Demo Banjo, the Yanda Vajas, and Mother Maja, the Yanda Vajas, and Mother Maja, and Conjula Maja, when you do the end of the Vajas, I don't know the Mother international relation reverse. Tam Jang of Majig when the Vajas was the Sunday, and you take and Rani, Jimmy, and when you choose on a Jimmy, the Sud of the one of the Jim that over the representation, David and Agavara, but Jachiva, you them about some Jimmy, was do Sanjay, and they were the Russian, you do what you want to recommend you. And I was the one you do wasn't bring them Malaysia, you want there's a number of them, they say there's no shooting, Malaysia, the young people don't do it from there. For the Nasai, Hana on the Sun bench, you got to die, so covered, Mother, easy, my dear mother, and what allowed to do. Combating for the Gubba, and Gubba, and saying Gubba, Mabale, Jungo, Mabale, Jungo, use the motor one, I sing down, one of our single other motoring, she was on a version, it was one, and as I can think out of the version with some day, and the was in do go to the day where I was on the Bome Balajo, and Jason with some jail, or some margin of the same. I think I have some go down. I don't cover it. Nature, and television, I remember those mother of those some Jason. Going to present a Gumben and Julaji, those take the whatever was a what on you and do lower the one was on you, what you know, you were the they give it to what the convention and the age of the was saying and the Samba, they some day time about the member chat and this and the Genetic, or the Shanty, and none of the other was So the Jivin Jivar Gurnam, the Vedana Maya, the was Mango, Jimata, Gabaram, Bavachuna, Jingo, nothing but another drainage, Mubo Meji, Jimado, Kumba, manager, watching on the version of Sunday, the younger brother than much longer, then I was Meiji and Mega, when I didn't then Te to Najabu, another 20 those who don't know the Java, they don't know what to about Chinjo, Java, and the Mujib, and the Dalana, which you need to they are something things in the Narab, they should then do that in the shooting on you are the ocean at the end, and associating the Buddha Jones, just one what was you may have your Jebedi, Sanjay Chevani, Juni, Brazil, what had happened, you don't know, I think they should have them, what they didn't do, and minute, and some Jita, just in Chevama, and she meant to have mentioning and go by me, but she met with Jeva was that the Indian did live in Angita, Dodo, and the Shuim, but Chudan Ranching in Matuba Imba. Oteleci, Tengu, Tengu, Tendegi, Chu, Taranshi, Matupa, Imbaji, Nanzo Shengo, Tengu, Jidan Karsana, Naransola Taji, Simganang, Yamamba Tamchi, Zawate, Kardirusana, Dembranze, Denzin, said the child Gurua. Dembranze, Denzin, said the Kari, Senduzane, Naransota, Namjun, Benachi, Chu. Zu da te rola so da kante ji la tawa yin yang tene ji zu yapo ji yana zu dubo ji yana da nyembo ji yana da menyen ba ji nganzu namdo zon ro yo namdo ge zone tende ge da nyembo de da korang ge rangin yin ba na ji sano tangre da menyen ba de ya da te ge rangin yin ba sano tangre zu zebo de ya zu te ge rangin yin ba sano tangre Zu Minzi Bataya, Zu de Rajin Basanotan Ruva, Desanotan in the Zane, Tene Zibo in Basanotan, Nimbo in Basanotan, the child of Jimbrua. That Minhe Badang, Zibo Mahim Basanotan, Shadang Lotching Gurua, Tin to Zane, Koji Dembranzimbe, Denzing Lotelatene, the Yaman Decha Shadan, Timolas of a Jene, simply Puyung Gurua. That in it and that Chutamji Rajing Maruba say a take it on a Sanotan the Zane. Zu kandida jine ko ranshi tongbare da kandida jine ko ranshi tongbare tongni ge thola dala zambo da ngemba ge yewa yo mare o tina jin zula zambo da ngemba ge yewa yo mare tin du zane tendre ge tongba ni yimba su sheba yina ya tene ndo cha ji mare es shedan ji mare es timu ji mare es tene ndo cha chena timu sumbo de ma je wa yina tene simde be ji da shor nene things in July Jigres, or Tende Chutamji Ranji, Tungi Tanatani, Keber Chegures, and this one on the wa. Tended that Tungi insulted in Sanima, she had the chicken.
And so the content of this chapter, which Khenchen just read through, it is really discussing the meaning of the lack of substantial nature or the non-existence of all phenomena. And so the root of the afflictive emotions is the failure to recognize this. So it is the mind that clings or grasps at true existence. And so ordinarily we experience phenomena through the doors of the senses, seeing forms with the eyes, hearing sounds with the ears, smelling smells, and tasting tastes, and feeling sensations and such. And then based on that, there is a designation of pleasant or unpleasant, good or bad. So we see a form and it is either pleasant or unpleasant or attractive or unattractive. We hear a sound and we think it is either pleasant or unpleasant. And then this creates concepts. And then based on that concept, there's the arising of attachment or aversion. And so we think that the sound itself holds the nature of pleasant or unpleasant. We think that the form itself holds the nature of attractive or unattractive. And so then in response to seeing that form, the mind, there's a desire or grasping, or in reaction to seeing what we we perceive as an unpleasant form, we have aversion or anger, which arises. And so this is all because of this fundamental fault of grasping to true existence where there is none. So it is this clinging to true existence, which is really the source of the afflictive emotions. So the true nature of form is emptiness. The true nature of sound is emptiness. And within the emptiness of form and sound, there is no good or bad. There is no pleasant or unpleasant. So for one who realizes this truth, desire, anger, and ignorance does not arise. They abide pacified within the meditative absorption, which realizes this true essence. And so then we'll continue to go into this in greater detail with chapter 9 tomorrow.
That's Lasso, the name Tango Terengi, someday, Terendelaja, the name Sani Tenemutune, Liu Gubane, Mandoya Tendisice, then on Jutan, Movaci Yam to Sung Yago.
So then we will conclude for today here, and then Khenchen Nyima will pick up tomorrow with chapter number 9. And now we can recite the dedication prayers together. By this merit, may I achieve omniscience, and having defeated all enemies, the faults, may I liberate all beings from the ocean of samsaric existence and its pounding waves of birth, old age, sickness, and death. By whatever merit that exists in all beings, that has been created, will be created, and is being created, may we do just as Samantabhadra did. In reaching the pure levels, may there be goodness forever and for all. The hero Manjushri, who knows how, and likewise Samantabhadra, I follow in their path and fully dedicate all these virtues. With dedications praised as supreme by all the victorious ones who appear in the 3 times, I dedicate all my roots of virtue towards excellent conduct. By the blessing of the Buddha who attained the 3 kayas, by the blessing of the truth that is the unchanging reality itself, and by the blessing of the community that is the undivided Sangha, may my prayers bear the fruit that accords with my dedication. By the power of the virtue accumulated through showing, in accord with the Buddha's teaching, the unmistaken path of the utterly pure intent, may the teachings of Drikungpa Ratna Shri, our 10th Bhumi protector, flourish and remain forever.
Thank you. And tomorrow.
Alas.
Okay.